Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for our special handbook preparedness version of the higher level high notes. Today we're going to go ahead and hit on a lot of exciting things that are coming for 2025, how you can make sure that handbook is prepared and ready to go for your team, for your company, and hit on some of the things that maybe you weren't aware of needing to put into that handbook. I feel like it's one of those documents that you create, you prepare, and then life happens, laws happens, things change, and you have to go back to it. Oh man, we should have included this in the handbook. We need to make some updates. So that's some of the things we're going to go ahead and hit on today and what you need to do to be prepared. So thank you for joining us. There is an opportunity to ask some questions. We ask that you put those in the chat if they come up. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation today, and hope to hear some of those things from you.
Yeah. Well, I will go ahead and introduce myself. If you haven't met me already, I am Whitney Morris. I'm the Senior Human Resources Consultant here at HireLevel. And I've been here nearly 3 years, almost. Been in people operations for over 20 years, all types of experience in different states actually too. So fun fact, I've been working since I was 14 years old. So I've had a lot of jobs and a lot of different experience. So thankfully I get to bring a lot of that knowledge and help, you all and our clients hopefully learn from my experience and my mistakes over the years. So.
All right, and I am Summer Vanderbilt. I am the Recruitment Development Manager here at HireLevel. I've been with the team for 8 years, so I've started with staffing here and have really kind of evolved into some different positions where I've taken on a lot of different training initiatives. Our platform, iSolved, and our human capital management services have kind of really developed into my role and how I can start to provide some of those services to our clients and make sure they are using it most efficiently. HR was never my career choice. That's not where I planned on starting. I had big dreams to go into the TV news industry, did that for a few years and decided I am not a news guru. I prefer to actually kind of stay away from it. So really enjoy my time here working in HR. What we want to go ahead and hit on to get started with are changes that you may have been preparing for. You may have been hearing a lot of communication from HireLevel on this. And this is the FLSA adjustments that were set to take place on January 1st. Now, just a few weeks ago, back in December, this was struck down by a judge in Texas, a federal judge. And basically, he said that there was not enough authority from the Department of Labor to go ahead and basically set a salary threshold as high as what was expected to go into place on January 1st. Basically, what this was going to do was a two-part adjustment. Back in July, there was a new salary threshold set, and then it went to $844 a week. January 1st, it was set to increase again to just over $1,100 per week. And we had talked to a lot of you who were wondering what they needed to do about their salary employees and what changes, adjustments need to be made. Do they need to change things to hourly? And then as we were having these conversations, we're like, hold on, never mind. This has been struck down. So those steps, now a lot of companies are like, so what do we do now? Do we go back to prior thresholds Do we adjust salaries that went into place July 1st? If I adjusted salaries already, expecting the increase for January 1st, really, what do we do? And now that's really up to you. If you think, you want to make changes, if you move them from salary to hourly and want to go back to salary, that's up to you. I wouldn't suggest, going back to prior pay rates. If you've made adjustments to increase, I don't think that would really help with morale within your company. But just know that minimum salary requirement has been blocked and will no longer be moving forward. Now, something you can take away from this is that the requirements for documentations, the pay cards, time cards, everything like that, your requirements for the proper records is still in place. You do need to keep documentations of different promotions, different pay increases, and that's all scheduled out by how long in advance you need to keep it. Now, there are some state requirements as well. Now we have that time cards, time schedules, merit increases, and pay grades need to be kept for at least 2 years, but also you need to check with your state. How long does your state require that? Because I know there are some other states that have a little bit longer of a threshold on how long you need to keep that. Hiring documents, I-9s, FMLA details, all of that, acknowledgement with the handbook, keep those details on file. We're not expecting that the FLSA is going to have another jump coming with the Trump administration coming in. It's kind of like deja vu. This happened really before he took office the last time, and it was struck down, and his administration did nothing to push that threshold back up. And we're kind of expecting that to happen again. That is just going to be kind of left there and really left up to the employers to manage that.
Yes. So the next one we're going to discuss is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, also known as PWFA. So this was created to enhance the workplace protections for pregnant employees and then anyone dealing with medical conditions surrounding childbirth or pregnancy. And it's really designed to open up conversation for those with those medical conditions and discuss any accommodations that might be needed. So when we look at who this applies to, so it does apply to employers with 15 or more employees, and then employees who are pregnant, recently given birth, or are dealing with some type of medical condition related to pregnancy or childbirth. And just keep in mind that it's actually a very wide range of conditions. So it's not, specific that they're just pregnant. It may be, conceiving, trying to conceive, going through IVF or things of that nature, maybe dealing with a loss of a pregnancy. So just try to keep an open mind when those terms are used. So what does it mean? So it means that as an employer, you are required to provide reasonable accommodations to those employees that are affected by any those types of medical conditions, and then provide, those reasonable accommodations. They may look different for different people. Some examples are listed here. Modified work schedules or light duty are probably the most commonly requested things, such as, let's say somebody has morning sickness, or they really struggle because they don't sleep well, so maybe they need their schedule shifted by 30 minutes to an hour or something, or they need lighter duty. Maybe they're on their feet a lot and they need more breaks, maybe more rest breaks, or water, going to the restroom, that type of thing. So just keep in mind, it is, it has to be a reasonable accommodations, which kind of brings us to the next section. And that is the interactive process requirement. So this is basically how these things are discussed, and kind of, how you have these discussions, how it's documented. So the PWFA does require employees to engage in this process, to determine what are those reasonable accommodations. And it's just a conversation that you would have with the employee to see, really what they're accommodating. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions about really what they're needing, time frame, how often they're needing it. And it may be during this conversation, you're not sure if this is going to impose undue hardship on you as a business. And that's reasonable for you to consider and think of. It's expected. But really, if you're not sure how to respond to the employee, it's just asking those questions to make sure you fully understand, what they're needing and what they're asking for. The other part of that is to document this conversation. So if you're having it in person, or over the phone or anything, my suggestion would be to, go ahead and write that down and keep that, for your records. But also, I highly encourage you to send that person some follow-up, um, you know, just type of dialogue between you two. It can be email, some type of correspondence that shows, hey, this is what we talked about. Thank them for coming to you. We definitely want to make sure that, they're happy and they're comfortable while they're working. And so you're just kind of jotting down, what you all discussed so that it's clear and everything is transparent. So in regards to what's in your handbook, there are some things that are required for this to stay compliant. So you want to have a statement in there recognizing the importance, and just kind of acknowledging the fact that you are supporting the PWFA. You can list some examples of reasonable accommodations. And then again, how do they request those accommodations? Make sure they understand. Maybe down the line, they might need to request an accommodation for this type of medical condition. And so you want to make sure they understand and know, how to request that, which is the interactive process. And unfortunately, we'd love to say that everybody is always compliant and, things go well and we don't have to discuss lawsuits. But unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that, these things do come up, and there are employers who choose not to follow these recommendations or requirements, really. So the first lawsuit filed under the PWFA by the EEOC was in Kentucky, and the employer allegedly forced the employee to take unpaid leave instead of transferring her to a job that didn't require her to lie on her stomach. Now, what we don't know, in these short statements is really how it all transpired. Were there conversations had? Was there documentation? You definitely want to keep all of that in mind. Again, those things are there to protect everybody involved. So when those conversations are had or some type of correspondence, make sure that you do keep that for your records, of course. And then the other example here is in Alabama, and it says this company violated the PWFA by refusing to excuse an employee's pregnancy-related absences. So, for many years, a lot of companies and employers have been very willing, to accommodate this medical condition. But really, this is just putting a lot of words on it, and it's making it official, saying that it's not just a suggestion anymore. It is a requirement, being an employer of at least 15 or more employees. So just keep that in mind.
All right, now we're going to get into everybody's favorite topic, it seems like recently, and that is paid leave laws. So if you have been a customer of HireLevel, you've probably heard about paid leave laws, PTO, paid sick time, any of that over the last year. And hopefully you are very well educated in what Illinois requires of you. However, our neighbor over to the west, Missouri, has passed a new law in this last election that requires paid sick leave for those employees. So this is a little bit different as to what Illinois enacted last year, or really this year for the beginning of 2024. But that was more paid leave time, and we're going to get into those requirements in a little bit for those that aren't as familiar. Missouri has enacted the paid sick leave. This really follows a lot of states and what they have put into place. As I continued to research, I've seen places like Minnesota and New York and other states who have very similar laws in place. And as we continue to move through the years where employees are really looking for more employer provided benefits and work-life balance, I do expect many states to really continue to follow suit in what they're providing. So the details around the Missouri paid sick leave are still a little bit blurry. As I said, this was just passed in November during the election. Voters did vote to pass this, and we are still waiting on Missouri's Department of Labor to really provide some official rules around this. So really what we're providing to you today is our interpretation of the law and really what we're seeing based on what voters were presented to vote on. Now, things may change over the next few months as Missouri does issue their final rules on how employers need to really navigate this and what those changes need to be or guidelines to follow. So we will continue to provide updates on this, but we want to go ahead and get out in front of it and provide that information. So this law does not actually take effect until May 1st. So you have, about 4.5 months for the beginning of the year to really figure out what your plan needs to be. Don't wait that long. You can give HireLevel a call that soon, but start working on this now if this is something that's going to affect your business. The way that this will accrue for employees equals 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours that they work. So starting from May 1st or day 1 of employment, whichever comes first. And this is going to really affect all employers. And it kind of breaks down though, like the difference here is going to be based on how many hours can be limited or provided. So if they have 15 or more employees, then employers are able to limit the hours accrued to 56 hours of paid sick time. Employers with less than 15 can limit that at 40 hours. So time can be accrued, for every 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, or it can be front loaded to the employee at the beginning of the year. Now, based on, you don't have to limit your employees to that 56 or 40 hours. If you already have a plan in place that allows your employees to accrue more sick time than that per year, that's perfectly fine. You can still keep that in place. If you have less than 15 employees and you want to allow them to accrue more than 40 hours of sick leave, you can do that. But the way that we're interpreting it at the moment is just that if you are in a situation where you do want to limit those hours, those are the terms that you can do so. At the end of the year, employers do need to allow their employees to carry over hours of the unused sick time. They can hold up to 80 hours of unused from year to year without expiring. So you may think paid sick time, paid time off, like what are the difference? What do I need to offer paid sick leave for? And there are several things that Missouri has broken it down into. So, of course, an employee who needs to be away from work because they are sick, whether it's a mental or physical illness, they have an injury, health condition, diagnosement, preventative care, anything, doctor related. Maybe they're caring for a family member that has any of those conditions. They are the caretaker. We think a lot of moms or dads that are home with sick kids. Obviously, that would fall under this. And then, of course, thinking back to 5 years ago, whenever a lot of our daycares and schools were shutting down for that wonderful time in 2020, that would then they have in here the closure of employees' place of business due to public health, or a child care facility, or a school place that's been closed for the same reason. Missouri paid sick leave would be allowed for paid leave at that time. And then necessary absences for domestic violence or sexual assault, stalking, anybody that's really kind of a victim of those types of things, or their family member and needs to seek services for that. This paid sick leave may be used for that as well. So I told you earlier you have about 4.5 months to get this figured out. That's because the state of Missouri does want you to provide notice to your employees within 14 calendar days, or on April 15th, whichever one is later, that this is going to be a policy that they're going to receive benefits on. So April 15th, 2025 is kind of our magic date there, that you need to have a policy in place and created and within your handbook. And, for those existing employees, the updated policy for them to review and sign. So the earned paid sick leave should be provided upon an employee's request, right? The thing about paid sick leave is that you can't really plan for when it's going to happen. It's one of those, oh my goodness, I woke up and I am extremely sick, I can't make it into work. It's really hard to tell an employee that they have to be able to provide prior notice on that. So the request can be made, orally, over the phone, through a phone call, in writing, think an email here, or text message, whatever is acceptable by you as the employer. And that should also be included within your policy. And if they're expecting, well, I'm in the hospital with my spouse, and we're expected to be here for a few days, tell the employer that. If you can foresee that you are going to be out longer than just the day that you're expected, go ahead and tell your employer that. Now, you can put within the policy that if an employee expects or will be using paid sick leave for at least 3 consecutive work days, that you can require documentation to confirm the need of that amount of time. So a doctor's note, really just saying why they were taking the leave, and that would be sufficient.
Hey, Summer, if I could make a comment.
Of course.
So a lot of times in these situations where employees are sick and they reach out, to you as an employer, it's a really great opportunity for you as an employer to show compassion, during it. It's as ones who create schedules, and right, we have deadlines and clients to answer to. When you're healthy, you still have to keep going. So your mind is focused on those business aspects of it, which are extremely important. But it's also a really easy opportunity that's kind of been handed to you to show that compassion and first express, you're sorry they don't feel well, or that they're going through a hard time or whatnot, and then ask the questions about duration and those types of things. So I just want to say, keep that in mind, because as a previous childcare director, my first inclination was, oh, we got to meet those ratios. When are you going to be here? What, those types of things. And I just found it very important to make sure, keep your heart out there first, and make sure they know that you care about them as people too.
Of course. Thanks for that note, Whitney.
Yeah.
Um, Continuing with documentation, you may think, well, what kind of documentation can I request? What kind of a note? Very much, just a note stating like they have been treated, they are off work until X day is really all you need. You do not need all the documentations on everything, all the treatment they've received. What's wrong with them? Is it, um, you don't get the nitty gritty details. You just need to have enough to explain that they needed to be off work and they were being treated. Um, Employers may not require employees to find a replacement worker for them to cover those hours in which they'll be absent. What comes to mind here is the restaurant industry. I'm sure most of us have worked in that at some point or another, where if you're a server, bartender, even in the kitchen, you know that if you're on the schedule, you're on the schedule. And if you can't be there, it's your duty to find someone to cover your hours. This paid sick leave is going to eliminate that. If you're calling in sick, you're calling in sick. You do not need, this law prohibits you from trying to find a replacement to show up and cover your duties. Now, I find this line, this is where I'm looking for a little bit more interpretation from the state of Missouri, where Illinois gave us, very specific guidelines on as little as 2 hours can be used at one time. Missouri says, well, it can be used in the smallest increment that your payroll system will allow you to use. So they're not giving you really that time frame of, if they're requesting hours, it needs to be at least 2 hours or 4 hours. They're just saying, if your payroll system can make it happen, then that's the amount of time that they can request off. So to me, that really shows that you can build this out and how you think your payroll system can handle this to really keep track of those absences and use of hours. Once again, record retention is really going to be key here in making sure that you have everything in place to view the documents and view the request and what has been accrued and what has been used. You really want to keep track of that and make sure you have a great system. This is not the time to use an Excel spreadsheet and rely on somebody to enter hours in every time you run payroll, every time somebody works. That 30 hours is not a fun number to base accruals off of. That's not a full 40-hour work week if we're thinking salary employees here. You're going to, by the time you hit 2 weeks, you've got 80 hours and you've got 2.5 PTO days or sick leave hours in there that they're accruing. So it's not going to be pretty and clean as 1 hour for every 40 hours. It's going to take, a lot of attention to detail to make sure this is done right. You want to be able to make sure that your employees are provided with the right accrual balance and they're able to understand what's available to them and what they've used. Missouri Department of Labor can come in, view your records at any time, and they can go back 3 years and really view that somebody accrued the time correctly, the requests that they've put in, that they have proper documentation, and that you have the policies needed to really be doing this the right way. So, like I said, this is still evolving. There's still a lot of changes that could come down from the state of Missouri on it as they issue some guidance, but we want to get out ahead of it and make sure that you are ready to go. Now, if you have a current paid sick leave plan already, and it really checks all of these boxes, you should be fine. But you just want to go back and review it and make sure you have a specific policy going into your handbook that you're providing to your new employees that lays it out, and really that you're making sure you're highlighting Missouri paid sick leave. Now, as I said, Illinois did the Paid Leave for All Workers Act that went into effect January 1st of this year. We're 12 months in, so I hope you all have become familiar with that. You have put, accrual plans in place, understand what that needs to look like for you. So the difference between Missouri and Illinois is that Illinois is paid leave for any reason whatsoever. Missouri's is sick time. So PTO versus sick time. So it was 1 hour per every 40 hours that was worked, up to 40 hours per year within a 12-month period. Those hours could be front-loaded at the beginning of the year or accrued as they're earned. And if you take the accrual method, right, those hours that they're accruing have to roll into the next plan year if they're not able to use them. The hours do not just expire. If they're front loaded, they have a full 12 months to use those 40 hours. They very well can expire, and the new plan year starts with a full 40 hours the next year. Once again, record keeping is a huge piece in this, and making sure that you have proper documentation on what's been accrued, what's been taken, and remaining paid leave balances. If you're differentiating between your current PTO plan that you offer employees versus having a separate Illinois paid leave plan, just because classifications are different based on payout upon separation, all of this needs to be included in your handbook and really laid out in front of the employees so they understand. The last thing we want them to do is go to the Department of Labor's website and file a complaint because they did not understand what they were being offered. You may have all of this in place, but if you don't lay it out for them in black and white, they may question it. And all it takes is somebody mentioning potentially that they're not being offered what's required by the state. And then the next thing you know, you have an audit. And if you're not compliant, fines start coming, not just based on that one employee, but anyone else that maybe didn't have everything done up to par.
Yeah. So the next section we're going to go into are just some handbook essentials that, these are the next 4 things we're going to go over are really things that we get questions about or comments on, or there's, a lot of discussion being had in our HR groups. And so it's just really important to make sure that you have these policies outlined and really understand the purpose of them. So the first one we're going to go over is the hybrid remote work policy, very prevalent and relevant to, the workforce today. And some companies are saying come in, some are saying stay home. It just really depends on the type of work that you do. So regardless of kind of your stance on that, it's really important to make sure you do have a policy outlining the provisions of that so that it's clear. So you want to include work hours. Obviously, make sure that it's clear on when they're supposed to be working, how they're going to be availability, and don't forget time zones. So be sure to think of different coasts and even different time zones, around the world when you're outlining that. Communication, so guidelines on staying connected through email, video conferencing, and other tools. Obviously, communication is extremely important when you have remote teams because you can't just walk down the hall and pop into somebody's office. So it's really important to make sure you lay it out that you want your people to be able to be reached, whenever needed. Workspace requirements. Make sure that their space is safe, and then of course ready for them to be productive for the day. So if there's animals around or kids, I've had a situation where we had somebody who was in a customer service position, heavy phone calls, and they had tons of dogs barking in the background. And so make sure you're clear on what type of workspace they're expected to have so that you can go ahead and tackle that on the front end. And then equipment, make sure they know if they have to provide any laptop or phone or whatnot, or if you will. And of course, this is one of the hardest pieces that I think why a lot of employers choose not to go more remote or hybrid, and it's because it's really hard, can be hard, to hold people accountable, on their performance and be clear with those expectations. So again, make sure those are outlined. They are clearly defined so that if something does come up or it needs to be changed, that you already have a good, base policy ready to go, and can address things if needed.
All right, another policy that's probably I'd say in our top 3 must have is the sexual harassment policy. Now, some of the aspects of this may vary by state and different state requirements, but overall, regardless, each company needs to have a sexual harassment policy that outlines just things that are acceptable behavior within the workplace, defining what sexual harassment is, and the steps that need to be taken to report or address any concerns. Now, not only sexual harassment, but just harassment in general, making sure like they're following the company code of ethics, code of conduct. If there's anything that's making an employee feel uncomfortable, they need to know what steps they need to take before, in order for these things to be addressed. So that policy, of course, really defining what is considered the sexual harassment and when it advances, inappropriate comments, hostile work environment, those types of things. Behaviors that violate the policy, anything verbal, physical, visual harassment. They don't necessarily have to be a victim, right? They can be somebody who is observing this happening between other coworkers. What does that reporting process need to look like? Are there anonymous options? Do they go directly to HR? What's the chain of command there? And kind of what are next steps? Anti-retaliation needs to go in here, that they won't be retaliated against for going ahead and reporting this. And then what does the investigation look like? Making sure you're putting out there the confidentiality that your company is going to be maintaining and that these things are taken very seriously. Training here in Illinois is something that is to happen annually. There are other states that do have requirements, but that is something, every new hire in Illinois should be going through. And then refresher training should be completed on an annual basis. And that needs to be laid out within the handbooks. Those trainings need to be signed off on annually whenever you are completing that with them. And you really want to keep that documentation. The last thing you want is a investigation coming from the state that this has happened, and you have to go through and pull out that documentation. I know that we talked about the sexual harassment policy, or I know they did the training, but if you don't have proof and you don't have the documentation that they signed off on it, it's their word against yours, and you really want to be able to pull that out and provide it.
Yeah, I was at an employment law conference back in October, and harassment is one of the top 3 types of claims that that are at the height of right now of issues with employee law. And what the panel of employment law lawyers said was just that this piece of it, just having this in your handbook and being clear, is one of the easiest steps you can take to prevent those claims. So having this outlined in your handbook, like Summer stated, but also, like she said, when you do that training, documenting that, so immediately you can pull that out and show, when everyone received that instruction on sexual harassment. Key. All right, so computer usage employee conduct policy is the next piece. So obviously technology is everywhere in our world right now, including AI now, and we're trying to find parameters around that, if that's something that you are implementing or going to design for your teams. You definitely want to make sure you outline the acceptable use of technology while in the workplace. It includes computers, networks, any software that they may have access to, of course, prohibiting it for personal use, or of course any type of inappropriate content. So just make sure it's outlined what they can and can't use it for, when they can and can't use it, especially if you're in the medical field, obviously, or any financial information. It's extremely important to keep that in mind and make sure that's outlined clearly to stay safe. Security. Also, right now we're in the world of breaches all the time and phishing scams and this and that. So, of course, make sure you're clear on steps that you're going to stay secure and how your employees should expect that as well. And then monitoring. A lot of employees don't understand that when they have access to technology or a company computer, that the company does have the right to monitor the usage of that device. So again, just putting it out there, letting them know this is something that occurs, and if needed, can be reviewed. Prohibited conduct. So examples specifically, unacceptable activities, hacking, downloading illegal material, things of that nature. You would think it's clear, but you really have to be transparent, extremely transparent with what is acceptable and what is not while they are on company devices or company time. And lastly, of course, consequences for those types of violations. We want to be clear again if it includes disciplinary action and or termination. So this is something that is very prevalent in our world right now. It's everywhere. Technology is going to continue to grow. And like I said, with AI, it's extremely important that you outline your guidelines and expectations, so it's just clear, so you can stay away from any type of disciplinary action if possible.
All right. Another one of those fun laws that we have specific for the state of Illinois, but is also another growing trend in other states, are the retirement benefits. Now this varies. Illinois Secure Choice is something that's been in place in Illinois for several years, and it's kind of edged its way in by, it started with employers with very large amounts of employees, and now I believe it's down to, 5 or less. You still have to meet these requirements. Basically, it is a state mandated retirement benefit that if you do not offer a retirement benefit to your employees, then you are required to enroll them in Illinois Secure Choice. So if they don't have, if your company does not offer a 401k or any other type of a similar retirement plan for your employees, then you do have to provide that, you do have to enroll them in Illinois Secure Choice. Now, employees do have the option to opt out, but they need to know about it, right? And they need to know what their retirement benefits are and what's going to be deducted from their paycheck, and or if you're somebody who plans to match or do a 401k, they need to know what that is, because the state does mandate that the employer provide a retirement benefit. So that's another one of those things. If they think they're not being provided the benefits that the state mandates, they can very easily go make that complaint, and then the next thing you know, the Department of Labor is coming to investigate you. You don't want that. You really want to make sure you've covered all of your bases here. Other states that we've seen are California, Oregon, New York, I believe Arizona, Missouri has one that is coming, like Show Me My Retirement. They have some fun names, right? So if you have a retirement plan already set in place, That's fantastic. Put it in your handbook. Make sure your employees know about it. If you don't, if you're relying on the state provided retirement benefit that the employees have to contribute to on their behalf, then you need to make sure that they know about it as well, and that they know those deductions are going to be coming out of their check if they do not opt out. So once again, very much like the paid leave benefit, as we are seeing employees wanting more benefits, more flexibility, more work-life balance, more preparation for the future, states are taking the steps to make sure that employers are forced to provide it. And this is just another one of those instances. Now, there are a lot of things that really go into a handbook. This is just kind of a handful of some of the things that we see. It varies state by state. I can tell you in Illinois, there are several policies that you probably don't even know exist, like allowing employees to leave to go donate blood and not holding it against them. There are a lot of things that really need to be looked at and make sure are included within your handbook. It's not a one and done. If I can tell you anything, it's just pull that document out every year, review it, and make sure everything that's in it is still relevant. Policies change, laws change, and you need to make sure you have the most up-to-date document at all times. Whitney and I both have talked to clients who have handbooks that they haven't touched in 10 to 15 years. They put it together at one point and really kind of never looked back. They printed out a bunch of them. Every new hire gets a copy, and we're great. And that's not how it needs to be. You need to make sure you have up-to-date versions. You're able to provide the most relevant version at any time and sign copies of that with the laws.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that, like Summer just said, all of those things, those are things that we can help you with. We see it all the time. Um, and one of the things we love to do is just make sure everybody's compliant. So you can stay away from fines and lawsuits and, really remain an employer of choice. So we'd love to help you with that.
Right, so
Do-
I'm trying to look really quick at questions here, and I'm going to be honest with you all. I usually don't handle the question piece. So I'm trying to look into our question box really quick. Let's see if I can even
Yeah.
expand
I see a question here, Summer.
it. Okay.
It says, are you limited to what states you all can create handbooks in?
No.
No, we're not. So, really, when we either design a handbook from scratch or you bring to us what you already have and you've been using, we can take it and compare it to, like Summer said, your state-specific requirements, along with, of course, federal laws, and make sure that it's compliant and just what you're supposed to have.
Yeah, that's great. Great question there. We can hit on any of them and really, like I said, go through. We have tools that really show us the requirements for each state and making sure there's not anything that gets missed.
Mm-hmm.
And really, some of those things just aren't optional. If you're doing a handbook, you have to include it all. You can't pick and choose what policies you like and what you think needs to be in there. Within a company to an extent, but when it comes to the states, there are a lot of different expectations in there.
Mm-hmm.
Whitney,
Mm-hmm.
any other questions that you can see?
That was the only one.
I think I see some.
Okay.
I see, how do you define eligible employees? And I believe that might have been regarding Missouri and the paid sick leave.
Mm.
Eligible employees, it's pretty well everybody, with the exception of, I believe, like teachers, a couple like government workers. Pretty well everybody within the state is going to be an eligible employee. Um, there's just a couple little caveats there that I think it's like
Mhm.
government workers and teachers and potentially unions
Yeah,
are going to
there's
be.
not-for-profits in there, of course, volunteers, those types of things too. Yeah.
Okay, another one. What are the states that require the paid sick leave policy to be updated? I'm in North Carolina. So this that we covered today is very specific to Missouri because Missouri did just pass this at their last election. Um, North Carolina, to my knowledge, does not have a paid sick leave policy requirement. However, Whitney, I can see you move. Are you moving there?
Oh, sorry.
North Carolina does not have a policy that I'm aware of. Actually, North Carolina is one of those states that really tries to leave things to the employer and not get too involved.
Uh,
So they do not have that paid sick leave policy that needs to be updated. But if you are an employer that does have a policy in place, that is something you need to, if you're going to offer it, you need to offer it to pretty well, lay out those parameters, who it's offered to, what that policy looks like, and record keeping really is the same.
mhm.
Is there required mandated retirement benefit programs in other states? Yes. Outside of Illinois, there are different requirements for different states.
Mhm.
And it's all based on just who has passed what. Missouri's, I believe, goes into effect in 2025. We had a couple of the other ones laid out. If your company currently has a retirement plan already, then that shouldn't be a problem. Each state is different based on the requirements. Are they an employer of 500 or are you an employer of 5 employees? And it's really going to differentiate based on what that looks like and what their law states.
Mhm.
Um, it is something that's gaining popularity. Like I said, Missouri is gearing up for it. Arizona, California, New York, Oregon. Um, there's some other states on that list as well that have that requirement.
And just reach out with specific questions. That's something that, like Summer said, changes often. So, we can definitely schedule some time with you and discuss those concerns.
Yeah, I see people asking, copies for slides. We will send out this recording. I'm sure the marketing team will include some slides with that. Reach out to us if you have specific questions. We're always happy to have a conversation and
Mhm.
really see where it leads. Whitney, what's our typical turnaround time on this? What do you
Um,
on handbooks? I want to know, what is our typical turnaround
oh
time?
gosh. Oh, well, it really depends on how your handbook is currently set up, um, what that looks like. If you're coming to us with, um, something that's already created, we really take it and compare it to the requirements that have to be in your handbook and make sure those are aligned well. And then, of course, share with you, other suggested policies or optional things. Um, it's tough to say. I mean, we can rush things if we need to, but it takes, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe. It depends on, like I said, all of those things, but two, if there's back and forth that we have to go back and forth with you on, just questions about preferences and wording and things of that nature. We definitely want it to be a high quality document, once we're finished, and make sure it's accurate and clear and is aligned with what, you want your company to present. So
Right, and we're
that's
not
definitely something.
We're not
Good.
going to copy and paste one handbook
Right.
to the next, and
Right.
follow a very bland template. This is
Mm-mm.
an individual document for your company that's really seen as an asset. And,
Mm-hmm.
if you're thinking of in the years to come, like if you are going to sell your business or if somebody else is going to come in, this is
Mm-hmm.
a document that really kind of leverages some of that and is seen as an asset to them. So we customize it. We put things like
Mm-hmm.
your company story in there. What's your mission statement? This, a lot of times, is the first inside look to your company that your new employees received. And we want to make sure you're providing the best image to them and the best,
Mm-hmm.
really, description of what's provided and what they can expect.
But yeah,
So,
it's such a great opportunity for you to show these new employees the structure and stability that you already have designed in your business. To show that, you're stable, it's a great foundation, and you want to be around for a long time. Um, it's just a very simple way to provide, clarity and transparency to those new team members. So it's hard to say certain time. It depends on um, a lot of variables and different factors, but that's something that we can discuss with you to see, what you're needing and if it's something that needs to be rushed or what the plan is. But I mean, we go as far as to include your logo and specific things, to your business.
and also, you know, we can't, we're not the experts on your business, right? You are the
Hmm.
expert. So we do start with a general list of a lot of questions that are going to help us navigate through what we need to do. And as Whitney said, it really depends on how responsive are you? How quick are you to communicate with us?
Hmm.
If we're held up on a question and can't move really forward one way or another, we have to have some open communication on all that. All right, so this question. If your corporate office is in Illinois and you have employees working remotely in different states, do you have to provide the Illinois sick leave? It is only for employees who work within the state of Illinois.
Hmm.
So no, um, and it's Illinois paid time off, not sick leave. So Missouri is the sick leave. Illinois is paid time off. Um, so no, you do not have to provide it to other employees who are not in Illinois if it is specific Illinois sick leave or Illinois paid time off. Sorry, I'm reading sick leave and I'm saying it. So no, it is only to those who are physically working in the state of Illinois. I'm in Illinois, Whitney's in Tennessee. Um, if we had that Illinois paid leave time policy, she would qualify. Sorry, Whit.
Luckily, we already have a great policy in place.
There we
So
go.
no
Hopefully
need.
that's what's going to cover for most people. And I think
Yeah.
that brings us to the end of the questions. If anything comes up that you have questions on, of course, our email is there. We are happy to talk through and discuss with you. It Businesses are not one size fits all. Everybody has different needs, and sometimes it takes having a conversation to get to the solution and the root of the problem and what you're wanting to put forth and what's best for your business. So
Hmm.
we appreciate you
Yeah.
all joining us today. This is our last high notes of the year. We have some great stuff in the works for next year, for
Hmm.
2025. Um, Hopefully you are all subscribed to our HR newsletter that comes out with a lot of these topics and information. Whitney and I try our best to make sure you guys have the best information set forth um, to really continue to manage your business and tools needed to streamline it and make it as efficient and compliant as possible. So thank you all.
Hmm.